Thursday or Friday that I sent him an email congratulating.
Well, today's Thursday.
Yeah, well, this last Thursday.
Monday the 14th was when he was appointed.
Yeah, city council, so.
And then I sent an email Tuesday.
Okay.
Should I go ahead and start the Zoom meeting too?
There's Tony.
On time?
Oh,
There's cupcakes if you like one. They're chocolate. Eat chocolate.
on Wednesday.
Okay, good.
Oh, he said he wasn't gonna be able to make it. Iron and stuff.
Oh, that's right.
So not. So
I did right.
he's a little busy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Just a little.
There are chocolate cupcakes.
Sorry.
Who's the chef?
Carly.
Thank you, Carly. It's Kelly's birthday. Oh, happy birthday. I don't need one, but since it's a birthday, I'm going to salute you.
My extra. To the door. Back in with you, everyone. Gotta let people in for a few minutes.
Well, welcome everybody to the Cultural Tourism Promotion Advisory Board. Got some new faces today. We go with the date today is July 17th, 2025. And the time is 6 p.m. Everybody survived the heat wave yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
We got some new board members, so it's great to see everybody here. I will go ahead and call the roll. We have Ryan Gale here, who's our chair. Carly Wright, vice chair.
Here.
Roger Williams.
Here.
Aaron Zeisset.
Here.
Betsy Vega's not here yet. Oh, she's walking through the door. Tony Piscali. Piscali. Christy Reed is not here, new board member. Anton Cobb.
Here.
Melissa O'Shea.
Here.
Moses Keener is absent today, also new. So welcome everybody. I'll turn the time over to Chair Ryan Gale.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight.
So the first order of business is because we did not meet last meeting and my term as chair and my term as the top board had expired, I'd like to make a motion to turn over the duties of chairing the meeting tonight to Carly.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Okay, motion passes. And just for the record, I will not be commenting or voting on any further agenda items since I'm off board technically at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you so much. Ryan's been on the board for 6 years.
Yep, 6
Yeah,
years.
he's been 2 terms. And I'm really sad to see him go because our last section was we got to serve together. Thank you so much. There's cupcakes there also in honor. When you come to meetings, there's cupcakes, not always.
So do we have an approval for the agenda? Or sorry, I guess.
I'll move to approve the agenda from May 15th.
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There is a calendar. Like the second page in, you'll see our typical year for the COT board. We're in July right now, which is, we're going to be electing officers tonight. And we have new board members, so welcome. It's really exciting because we haven't had a full board in a while. So it's great to have some new people on board to participate. And this goes through kind of what we have ahead for a year, how it looks for TOT. We review the application and manual every year, so it's like, if there's any revisions that we want to make, those will be happening in the summer, and then we vote on them. And they come through in like August, September. October, we have our mandatory meeting for those who are going to be applying for TOT funds or potentially. Board members don't have to come to that, but we really like it if you do, because it really gives you a good look of, we go through the manual, we go through the application, and it gives kind of all the information. It's also an opportunity for those potentially applying to ask questions, learn more. Chris and Kelly are great advocates, and they're great for access for people who have questions anytime.
And staff highly recommends that board members attend the orientation. That way they can verify, Chris said this, no, he didn't say that.
There we go. Now it's on the record.
Now it's on the record.
So then applications are due in November.
December, we will start our review of applications, which we normally get them in sections, as you see, and so you can, it's not like we're doing all the applications once, you review them in batches. We make it so it's a little easier, because we never know how many applications we're gonna get, but usually there's like 50 average. So yeah, sometimes a lot to go through. Hopefully, the changes that we might be putting forward will make that easier. So then we do grant review for a few months, and then they come up in March. So the final scores that we decide if we want to move forward with those. And then, of course, it has to go to the city. April, May, June, they do their budget at the city level, and then we get to this point here. And if you guys ever have any questions about that, feel free to. So we've got the minutes from May 15th, and then our subcommittee on June 4th, June 17th, and July 9th. All approved. Do I have a motion, motion for approval on those?
I will. Motion to approve. I'll second.
Any discussion? How we vote? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Now it's time for public comments of any person wishing to speak and address the board on a matter that is not in the agenda. Anyone like to talk? So we'll move on. So we've got our items requiring action. Our first is the election of officers.
And I included in there the, from the Cultural and Tourism Promotion Advisory Board's handbook, rules and regulations. Pursuant to SRC 16-4, The board shall annually elect a chair and vice chair who will hold the office at the pleasure of the board. Elections shall be held each fiscal year as closely to July 1 as practical, but no later than September 30th. And upon a vacancy of any office. Oral nominations shall be accepted. Members shall not self-nominate. Nominations for chair and vice chair shall be handled separately. And the vote shall be by voice unless we use that count hands. So those are just the ground rules.
So I guess we sense to vote for chair first. Would anyone like to nominate someone for chair?
I was about to nominate.
I would like it.
Is there a second?
Yeah, that's easy.
I accept that nomination.
Any discussion? No?
This means you
Sure.
have to make cupcakes. Sorry. Right, and it have to be, you set a precedent.
Meetings, I'll be so excited.
All right. Call for the,
Next year.
no,
Let's
take a
vote.
vote, we vote on it, and then we'll be vice.
Alright,
All those in favor?
Thank you, someone say it. I.
Sounds like it's unanimous.
with that, thank you guys. Maybe, no.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So we now have a vice chair, who serves, and would anyone like to nominate someone for vice chair? Yeah, you like brand new to the board, but I'd like to nominate Anton.
Lucky you.
Pressure.
How do you feel about that?
I don't know enough to know what I don't know.
You're perfect.
Yeah.
You met all the requirements.
Yeah.
Nothing like throwing someone in, like, not feet first, but head first, like here, just dive in.
Chris, could you share with him maybe a little bit of what the duties are for vice chair before he accepts the nomination?
Sure. So duties of the vice chair are really, you'll get the opportunity with the chair to see the agenda packet a little bit ahead of time. Identify any types of topics for discussion for the agenda packet. If the chair is unable to be here, then you facilitate the meeting on behalf of the action. That's really all there is to it.
And Chris would be here to help you facilitate if necessary, but
Oh,
also make sure you dot all your T's, your.
Helpful piece.
Betsy, did your guest intend to come back in? I'm not sure. Thank you. I'll watch one. Okay, thank you.
Was there a second on that nomination?
One second.
You can decline,
You can't.
I have previous experience of knowledge of your experience in that, so I just think.
Appreciate it. Are there any other nominees or?
It was jumping.
Yeah.
Might scare you more.
I'll accept this. The nominee.
Okay, nice.
Thank you.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Welcome, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Our next big thing is, the summary of subcommittee recommendations. So we have a subcommittee got together to review the application for the TRT grant. The main focus of it, was really on the event grant to try and make it, easier, more streamlined, simplified. So the committee put together, nine recommendations, and we're gonna go through them, one by one and have to vote on each. My glasses, sorry, actually.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Nick Allard, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
If I have a comment, if we have comments or feedback or questions about any of these,
I'm
so be inclined to.
open
Ask.
to it. I'm open to it, and I'm not sure where that will go necessarily, because the committee, yeah, okay, the committee already met, but yes, if you've got something to say, we'll hear it.
Thank you.
Determine where things go.
So the first one, reduce all written fill-in sections from 7,500 words to 3,500 characters and update grant manual and online applications to reflect new character count restrictions. I didn't bring my sample of what 7,500 characters looks like. It's 2 pages, solid text, and some of the questions on the grant manual had that many for each answer, and it was a lot of text, so we're trying to make it a little more concise. Yes. Do we have to like motion to vote on each one? So,
I motion to vote yes, or I motion to vote, sorry. I know how I'm voting.
yeah.
Clearly.
I second that motion, so, all in favor of accepting recommendation number 1?
I,
Thank you. Number 2, budget sheet, provide a blank version with example version in the manual, clarify differences during orientation. There is a copy of what the budget sheet looks like, on the next page. Normally that was included in the grant manual, and it had like a couple things. Well, actually, exactly.
It was a sample version.
So we're wanting to provide one that actually has some like numbers to show them, like, here's what it would look like filled out along with it. So, anyone motion to?
I will make that motion.
A second? I'll second it. Vote, all in favor of accepting the change for the number 2?
I.
Aye. Also on the budgeting sheets,
Nobody's opposed?
nobody's opposed to that.
Unanimous?
It's really divided. No.
I can be oppositional. if you
Yeah,
want.
I'm only taking the right count.
Budget number 3 on the budget sheet, move marketing line higher on template and prioritize its importance during orientation. As we are a marketing grant, the idea was this is moved up, so it's given more attention.
Yeah, I think that's.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
No, I second.
I guess I haven't asked any discussion. Any discussion? No. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Number 4, for scaled funding based on historic attendance. Chris helped us by putting together a potential of what it could look like or what it would look like for grants, depending on its how many attendees they have to how much money they would be able to get. This came about because we have the maximum amount you could get or apply for is $10,000. Potentially a lot of people were applying for $10,000 for an event. And honestly, it was taxing the system because there was some events that were like a 300-person event applying for 10,000. And there was also like a 5,000-person event applying for 10,000. So we came up with the idea of a scaled funding to potentially help it so that there's still a share of money that aptly matches attendance, since a lot of, well, the grant in the roundabout way gets its funding through TOT dollars, which are generated by the hotel tax. So do we have a motion?
I guess a question.
Let me get a motion first. And then okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Now we can discuss.
Okay, discussion.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
Sure, Vice Chair, you sure? Already made it.
We're here for discussion.
Is there consideration within the application or recommendations that you discussed about need periods or shoulder dates or when the attendees are here? Whether it's kind of a date that's a little less readily gonna have.
Are you talking about incentives for doing shoulder events?
Yeah,
There's no questions currently in the application related to, when is your event going to be held?
Mhm.
There hasn't been any direction from the board to look at promoting or advising to provide shoulder months, as we say in the business, coverage. So that, at this point in time, there's no discussion.
What does that mean? Shoulder events or
So
months?
shoulder months are gonna be the months in which, there's less activities taking place, there's fewer events.
They're on the cusp of the peak.
Yeah,
season.
so typically
Peak
summertime
season.
is the peak, all the events are taking place, so shoulder months are gonna be your winter months. That they see with your spring, early fall.
So it's sometimes more moderate sized event might be more impactful in December than in June.
If you've got some thoughts, there is a page that Chris included that shows attendance from a number of events over the last few years. So it shows like the average attendance, but these are people who have received TOT funds or events that have received TOT funds. To kind of
So
show,
Yeah, this list is from our final report, so after you hold an event, you're supposed to submit a report. One of the questions on there is how many people attended. So this was taken directly from those reports that I've had for the last few years. And so I tried to make sure that I had, I tried to make sure I didn't have the same event twice in there. But I think there might be one or two that you can see that they've kind of moved up the scale. They've increased depending on which event it was. But for the most part, I tried to make sure that they were representative of the full scale. That I wasn't duplicating the number of the same event, same organization type thing. But that's for basically for the last, you can see 2023 down there on the bottom. As one of the dates on there, all the way to 24, 25. But that's, those are the final reports showing what their activity level were.
I just wanted to mention also that part of the thought process was that having a structure like this also gives the person applying or the organization applying for the grant an idea for their own budgeting purposes and assessing the viability of their event, what they're likely to get, rather than thinking they're going to get the full 10,000. Planning the needs.
Sets expectations.
And it might even, as Carly would say, motivate them to grow their numbers so that they can get more.
My one question is, what kind of documentation or proof of evidence are we asking?
As far as attendance, it's totally up to every organization. They get to determine how they collected them. Some of them are ticket sales for like indoor events. Some of them are outdoor events where they are estimated or hand counted. So we're totally dependent upon the organization to report, share how they collected those numbers.
I think we're gonna tie funding to events, and we may not be able to make this change this year, but something to consider for at least in the manual is best practices on how to collect that kind of data, especially for newer organizations that maybe don't understand how to document that properly. Because if we're gonna tie funding to this, one, we're incentivizing people to reduce their numbers, and if they're not providing any proof that, it's like, but also if we're gonna tie their funding to it, giving them some tools or resources or best practices on how to document.
We did have a discussion on that, and also it was one of the main points was that instead of using the old grant to fund their program, this is just a supplemental.
No, I think it's a good idea. I just would like to provide them with maybe some best practices, maybe Travel Salem or somebody has like best practices on something. Like the industry to just provide them the resources and say in the orientation, say, hey, this is how we suggest you document this.
I'm pretty sure that most of these organizations know how to take account. They're on one stage. At the end of the day, how are we going to verify what they actually provide to us? We're still going to be relying upon them to be truthful and honest in their reporting.
Sometimes just having guidelines though will sway people to that direction. If they feel like things are going to be scrutinized at some point, then likely to.
You mind? As a person who puts on these events and writes the application, I dislike this number. I think it is. I think it's unfair. I think there's a lot of groups that while you say, oh, it'll motivate them to bring more, they may not have the space to bring more. For example, the choral musical group, they can only bring so many in.
Yeah.
Places like, and I know that the Willamette Art Center had to move, but in the past, their event was ginormous because it happened to be, you know, in the same place as the state fair. So I'm struggling with this and I don't think that it's fair. And if you look at the numbers, you've got 32 are gonna be having to ask for less than $4,000. And 15 are gonna be more. It just, to me, it seems unfair and uneven. And not to mention, it's very down to very tiny numbers. I mean, I don't know. I just, you know, you were saying, Chris, how, you know, in that list that you have, the numbers had gone up. Well, Magic at the Mill actually went down because we are only doing 4 nights instead of 5 because it was in the best interest of our organization. So what we would be told is you have to have less money now, which is ironic because we moved it based on the fact for the best interest of our organization in order to bring more money in. So I don't know. Personally, I think it's not a good idea. And I think it would be really hard to ask people to do this.
We certainly did consider the smaller events and things like the choral groups that have limited capacity. And the idea behind that was to encourage them to present a series rather than one individual event. And group that together so that boosts that number. In the case of yours, I think if you're doing fewer days, I think it follows that there would be less.
Less what? Marketing? No.
Well, no,
That's actually not
but
true.
less funding.
Okay. Well, I want to go on record that I disagree with this recommendation. I think it's inappropriate and I think it's asking too much. And I don't understand where, I mean, the funding is gonna, you have more funds than this. I mean, if you've got 32 people who are gonna be getting $3,000 or $4,000 and 13 who are gonna be getting the full 10,000, I don't understand how that works.
At least in the past several years, nobody's been getting the full 10,000.
Well, that's true. I'm aware of that, but anyway. And then you look at the list there also about the numbers, how high, how few people have over a certain amount. Look at, I mean, I don't know. I have a real problem with this. I think that what this is saying is you're a smaller event, you're not as important. We don't want to fund you because you're not going to bring in 20,000 people. Sorry, you're not important. I think that's the message you're sending. And I think that's inappropriate and wrong.
And I'm sure you feel that way. I mean, we thoroughly discussed.
I know, and I asked to be on this committee,
Yeah.
but no one answered my email. Someone said, yeah, I think Carly, you had reached out and I said, I'd love to be on the committee. In fact, I think I was the first one that responded. Nobody asked me to join. I would have loved to have had input. And so the 5 or 6 of you or whatever who are deciding this, I just want you to know, I think this is not a good idea. And I'm just going on record to say that. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm gonna say that when we talked about historically just that no one has received 100% funding in the last few years because there hasn't been that in the budget. And so everyone has taken less money. But this year, the group looking at the application and reviewing the whole purpose of the TOT is that we're marketing. We're here to promote and support the promotions of things happening in Salem. So the idea of tying it to attendance, we had to connect it to something, and it was attendance works with how many attendees are there, how much money can they get? We also want to like focus it on marketing as opposed to everyone getting $10,000 no matter the size of the event, and the money not being used for marketing and being used for like operation or supporting or other aspects of the event.
But would you be willing to possibly consider, instead of breaking it down into 10 different sections, doing like up to 5,000 people in attendance receive $5,000 and 5,001 and above receive
Fewer
10,000
tiers.
or something like that? Fewer categories? I mean, this is just, sorry, no offense, but silly. I mean, how am I supposed to estimate how many are gonna be at Magic when, I mean, how am I supposed to estimate that? I have no idea. I mean, you're talking about what if I get 4,075, but I only estimated 3,075? I mean,
And
I'm
that-
not communicating.
That
very
would go
well.
into your next year's application as,
So then I get more money because I had a lot more people last year. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry.
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not making any sense either. I'm not communicating this very well, but I just think, I mean, go for it. I mean, I can't say anything more. You guys are gonna vote on it. And if you go through with this, I'm gonna be really curious to see how this plays out. I'll be curious to see how it plays out.
I mean, with all changes, we have to go through it to assess
Absolutely,
how
yeah.
how it works, what
Right.
works, what doesn't,
I know,
and then make adjustments as
Yep.
as needed. This, I'm sure will be.
that's true.
And also just to impact too, that even though that it is an amount that is awarded, there are receipts that also match up to that, so there's.
I know, I believe me, I've been doing this for
Yeah.
about 15 years. I'm fully aware of how
So
it
there's a
all
lot of
works.
details that come
And
in.
we do, and just to speak for myself, for Magic at the Mill, I mean, I appreciated the one recommendation where you say a certain percentage has to be put toward marketing. I think that's absolutely true. We do about 20% or more, we probably 30-40% goes toward marketing of our total budget. So, you know, it's not like just because we may have had a smaller number last year, we didn't use less money for marketing. It just doesn't make sense. That's. I don't know.
I have one caveat to that, because we're writing them so much earlier, like if we say our attendance is going to be 1,000. And then after we write the completion report and it ends up being 800 or whatever the category would be.
Right.
Do we lose that amount that was approved? After when the completion report is written, if our number drops below that category? Just curious. That's just an administrative question. I think.
It is kind of an administrative question. That's probably up to the board as to how that should be.
Okay, that's just something that I would like.
Or do we get more if we had more come in than?
Correct.
I mean,
That's the flip side of it.
yeah, that's a very good
So I
question.
just think that that's something to, because we're doing them so far out. It's hard to know unless there's some history, and I especially think of the newer organizations that have only done this for a couple of years, or maybe it's the first year. It's hard to predict
Well, yeah,
that
how
far
are
in
they gonna
advance.
tell you what their history?
My
My question would,
Joyce online who also has her hand raised.
Anyway, that was my,
my question for this would be, should we ask for like a 3-year average of attendance to give maybe a clearer picture? And if it's a new first year applicant, do they automatically fall into a particular category based on the type of attendance? Like a generalist, maybe similar events. I mean, what do you do with a first year?
I think they would need to make a reasonable
Yeah.
argument for what they're expected to.
I mean, if the grant is in the current state, they're already a first year event, could be like, I want 10,000 because I'm gonna, like, they already have to. And it could be off, they could be applying for 10,000.
And then the following year, if they didn't meet that, they'd be categorized down.
Yes.
But then that's the question that she raised, where
Yeah.
they asked for 10,000, but only 300 people showed up. Do you guys say, oh, you can't get 10,000, you don't wanna get?
with 300, if they spent the required amount on marketing, and they're getting 300, obviously we're gonna have to make adjustments for at least for the following year. The intent of this is not to penalize or incentivize either way, other than to incentivize effective marketing that brings people into Salem.
If you have a
That-
space of where you're having to hold an event. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole point of the grant is to incentivize marketing, regardless of the number of
If you
people that.
limit it
just-
to capacity,
Used that way.
and also if you have limited capacity on a space, then you have limited the number of people that are gonna be allowed in that space anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah,
you
right.
don't necessarily need to be doing marketing to everyone in Sundry, maybe it needs to be more focused marketing. That's less expensive.
Not necessarily.
And I
Can we,
Not-
can we get to Lisa Joyce on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Lisa, go ahead. Can you hear us?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for recognizing me. And okay, I'm going to talk about promoting culture and promoting tourism, which are two different, to me, feel a little different. And I feel I have felt particularly, not about my organization, but say a group that's serving a minority population, that they might need a little extra boost up front to grow their event because they're growing. The other thing that if there's live music involved and live musicians involved and there's a limited space, I think many people underestimate how much it costs to do that event, because the musicians need to be paid, all those sorts of things. So that sort of notion of, the dollar per attendee, it's a little harmful to the artists that are creating the event, in my opinion. And that's just me coming from a theater background and doing that. But I'm an arts center. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but I do feel like the baby organizations that are trying to get off the ground, the minority, or maybe, I don't know what the word is. I'm looking more on the edge of our cultural scene, deserve to grow, because I think that's enriching the Salem community. And I'm done.
If I can just say, I don't disagree with you at all. I think that's very, very important. And there are incubator grants out there. There are grants out there that support those sorts of organizations. This particular grant is, to the best of my knowledge, is to promote. It's a marketing grant to bring people into Salem that contribute to the TOT funds so that we can keep cyclically funding organizations. It isn't necessarily an incubator grant. It isn't an operations grant. And I think it's been used as an operations grant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're just trying to rectify that issue. Is this going to be the perfect solution? Probably not. Are we gonna have to adjust and make changes to this as we go forward? I'm sure we will. But we have to start that somewhere, or it just continues down the same path where we've lost the focus of what the grant is actually for. And
But doesn't the point of you're a couple points down where you guys say that a certain percentage of the grant has to be applied towards marketing? That addresses that, I think. I think that totally makes sense.
and that's one
Yeah.
step forward.
Yeah.
And in that, not to jump ahead, but in those conversations, we talked about that number being much higher.
Mhm, sure.
And
I
but
think
we
that
wanted
makes
to
sense.
go move that up incrementally, just like we want to make some of these
So-
other changes incrementally.
So what about the organization that has 300 attendees, but all 300 of them are coming from Montana? So for example, and yet the organization that has 10,000 attendees, they're all from Salem. They're not, so just because of the size of the event is smaller, doesn't mean they're bringing in less out of town visitors than a larger event.
I think there's always going to be exceptions to everything. But I think for us to try to write anything, considering every possible exception,
Right,
would
it would be
never-
impossible, yeah.
we'd be sitting on the stack and this big, but
good luck. To you guys, I hope that you're able to figure out how to logistically make this work, because I don't.
To your point, Michelle, as far as impact on this, you know, some of these lower ones, you know, that are below the 4,000 attendee level, they're used to getting that higher dollar amount of $8,000 last 2 years or 3 years. So cutting down to 4,000, I mean, that's half of what they have been experiencing in the past. So maybe there's a question about how do we trim that aspect of it to be more equitable, lack of a better word.
We can regroup as there's just like maybe like 4 chunks of like a small, 2 mediums, and then the big one. Condense it just a little bit, maybe that is like a compromise.
So for example, so what some of the smaller organizations that have like 300 in that 300 range, they would get, you know, 3,000 for each event that they held. If they held 2 events, they'd get 6,000 total. Whereas if they combined those 2 events and they had 300 each one and put them up to 4,000, so it'd be more advantageous for them to do the 2 events separately, smaller than to get the full 3,000 or 6,000 total. Not that they're supposed to be commingling the TOT monies for their multiple events, but that's how the math is kind of playing out right now. But yeah, when you look at the table, the number of events that are below the 4,000 threshold is, you know, half of them basically. So there is a concentration of these smaller events, and if they're going to get the smaller dollar amount, what would be more equitable?
What's the new table look like? You guys have the power to
You get
propose that.
determine how that looks.
What do you think might be less impactful on half of our applicants?
Do you move it down to make it $5,000 down to the base bottom level, or 4,000 or 5,000, somewhere in there? I don't know.
So in that scenario, the organization drawing 200 people,
Or
it gets the same amount as the organization drawing 5,000 people.
Or is this a tool for organizations as far as a recommendation of what they should be asking for based on their anticipated attendance? And they can still ask for more, but is this going to be a recommended guide, or is it going to be a hard and fast rule? If this is the amount of attendance you anticipate or normally receive, you get this on. What's the board's?
In the past, organizations have asked for however much they felt was appropriate for them to ask for. A lot have asked for the full amount of $10,000, which is kind of how this came about, with some of the lower 300 people events getting $10,000 and a 8,000 person event getting $10,000. There was a disconnect there. Also, looking at how much marketing also comes up later, but I shouldn't say this word. Personally, I did not feel comfortable. Like, we have the ability to say, no, you're not gonna get 10,000, you only bring 300 people, so I suggest we only give you $3,000. Personally, I did not feel comfortable saying to an event or like bringing it up, because that.
It's too subjective.
Right,
It's
that's
too
what,
subjective and a
Yeah,
part of it.
yeah, so it was one that when, yeah, this could be put up as a guideline. I think if we did it as a guideline and still let events and organizations apply for however much they felt was appropriate, we then as a board do have something that we can say, as opposed to saying like individually like, oh, no, I
Yeah.
don't think they should have that. We can be like, oh, look, this is a 300 person event that's asked for $10,000.
I personally would feel more comfortable implementing this set of guidelines to begin with, and see how we can use it as a rubric to evaluate and see how the organizations apply it when they are applying. Rather than it being a hard and fast that this is, because also she did bring up about point, are we gonna call back that funding or give more funding if they don't meet their, or they go over, like, how are we gonna do that? Or are we just gonna say, well, next year, you can't apply. for this amount.
Yeah, I think. Oh. It's uncomfortable for me to speak to this because I'm not a part of all these
I
conversations.
wasn't either, so.
Oh, no. But I'm speaking freely that, I just think, just listening and I'm wondering if the solution might be to, onboard this scale. And then below it have, placed a request for an additional funding from $500 to $5,000 based on, you know, whatever you think your criteria is to apply for those extra funds. Knowing that you're applying for things based on historic attendance, not projected attendance. So your historic attendance is something that you'll know. But you might say, you know, these are over shoulder dates, so these are really important travelers to pay this into the TOT fund during this time. Or you might say, you know, that these are travelers from over 50 miles away, which are important because they're maybe seeing Salem for the first time. Maybe have the space to voice that there for consideration.
You have to like apply for the smaller box, but then you have like a box underneath where you could
Make your.
make your little extra case and you could review it later. That would make sense to me.
We have Lisa Joyce's hand up again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lisa, go
And
ahead.
thank you. I just also want to speak a little bit about context for the smaller arts organizations, given what's happening with the NEA and you know, arts funding generally. This could be devastating to some of those smaller events because the source of basically pass-throughs through the Oregon Arts Commission, et cetera, is going to go down. And so which is sad and tragic. And so that's something I just wanted to add as context for my love for the little arts organizations.
Can I ask, are you saying that not getting this funding would keep them from operating their event?
Yes, quite likely. If you're getting a hit from being at an $8,000 grant to a $3,000 grant, and I know it's a reimbursement grant, that can be really, really hard on some of these events. And they're not here to represent themselves, those little ones, but just a thought.
I wanted to mention this, Betsy, that we did consider these smaller organizations, and again, it goes back to the operational portion of it, that this is a grant for marketing, not really to proportion those operational costs. And if there is going to be an event, then that should be well thought out and budgeted. So that way this is going to be that supplemental and not like it was before. So that's why we're implementing these changes, so we can refocus to go to what this grant was originally intended for.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen. 75% of their budget went to the operations, right? Or more. And now that's going to be reduced. So at whatever grant amount, but the dollars available will be shrunk. And I understand, I mean, you guys do God's work here, so don't get me wrong. You are trying to do right by the tax program and all that. I just really fear for our cultural scene shrinking rather than growing.
I have a question. So when they're applying for the grants, can we like see like, oh, in the past they've got this amount, in the past that year they got this amount and this amount, and maybe we can see like if, you know, they used that properly and they've been growing, or if they're decreasing, to maybe be like, oh, well, they've been growing every year and they've been getting this big amount, but now we have to put them back at this small amount, and maybe use those past numbers to, sorry, I didn't form that question properly. So I guess we see all their past numbers every time they apply, right?
But we don't, we actually, when the applications are given with the current application, unless you have historic knowledge, you don't know if the person's or the group has ever applied before. Unless they've been around as long as Christmas.
Yeah, once you've been around a year or two. So each application is unique to that year. There is a question on there, tell us about past events related to this, how you did. Very few of them, we have not provided how much they've gotten in the past with TT monies. That would take a totally separate type of report to generate. Not that it couldn't be done, but it would be a little more labor intensive from staffing to be able to get that information collected and ready for each one of the events or each one of the meetings in December, January, February. But it's doable if that's something that the board wanted to take into consideration.
Got a lot of ideas out there. How are we feeling? We also have a motion.
I think we have to start someplace. And this looks like a place, sounds like a place that I think that we should start. We can always change it later. And it may not be fair, but I don't know how you can say that an event that brings 2 or 3 people in, no matter how wonderful that event is, how you should put it in the same block as something that brings 5,000 people. It just doesn't make sense because the smaller group is going to use that money, not just for marketing, but it's going to use it for something else. This is not an operations. This is a marketing. And people need to be reminded of it. And we've got a mandatory meeting coming up here for people. They need to be told that. If you ask for $10,000 and does it look like you can spend $10,000 marketing? We're probably not going to give you that.
So you're saying you have to spend 100% of the grant on marketing?
I beg your pardon?
You have to spend 100% of the grant on marketing?
I don't know, that's not what I.
Oh, I thought you
You don't just have to spend all that money on advertising.
No, marketing.
On marketing, yes,
So
yes, you do. It is a marketing grant.
So
Is it not?
100% of the grant goes to marketing is what you're.
Well, why do we call it a marketing grant?
Oh, because then your number 6 is wrong.
That's not the current recommendation, but
Yeah.
it is, in the spirit of the grant, I think we are headed in a direction to try to increase the level spent on marketing because the intent of the grant is marketing. And like I brought up when we were having these smaller discussions, that if everybody's happy with us just this being an operations grant and us giving the same amount to every organization every year, we can make the application 1 page. You just fill out your name and it'll save everybody a lot of time and effort and I that too. But as far as I know, that's not the intent.
Lisa, go ahead.
I'm just saying that's not what my argument was at all. I think it's great that you want to encourage organizations to spend money on marketing. But the way that this proposal is written, 75% of the grant is not going to marketing if people comply with the guidelines. So that's just, and I think there needs to be groundwork done with the organizations that are applying. Yes, attending the mandatory orientation is going to be key, but to really red flag, this is a shift. It's a pretty big shift coming your way so that they can start looking for other funds.
That's the perfect fact. If they are nonprofits, then there are other organizations that can fund, so they can do their, I mean, this is just gonna be, again, we've mentioned several times, a supplemental part of that. But if they need that extra money, then there are organizations that they can, ask for sponsorship for that.
I think call a vote. Do we have anything more to discuss?
I'm sure, well, this is where I'm struggling. So first of all, this is a big change to jump on people as a mandatory thing first right out of the gate. A soft this guidelines and conversation of this is the direction that we are moving in. And in the next year, we are going to have some kind of tiered evaluation. Right now, this is guidelines for you for applying, and this is guidelines for us for evaluate, so that we have a rubric we go to evaluate how much money we're going to give organizations. But from a communication standpoint, from a public affairs standpoint, what affairs that on, launching this kind of change in the public, even organizations that are applying for grants, which is right out of the gate and make it more black and white, cut off mandatory. It's gonna harm relationships. The other aspect of it though, that is hard and be hard is because we just touched on it a little bit here, is that if the expectation that we're moving towards is that 100% of this grant is going to be spent on marketing, which I think it should be. I think we do need to move in that direction because we aren't an incubator grant, we are an operational grant. We do need people in that direction, but it does take some time to change behavior. You also want to give organizations time to identify new funds. You want to give them enough time, a few years to say, hey, these are other grants that we may be pulling because we're going to probably save reduction in our top grant. So that allows them to plan their budgets and plan their money, and it softens the blow. If we're gonna implement this, and then we're also gonna say, but you only actually have to spend 25% on marketing, that's the rule. You're giving a mixed message there. You're saying, we want you to spend money on marketing. We really want it to be 100% on marketing, but we're only gonna mandate 25% on marketing. But if you're not, like,
There has never been a discussion about us, well, obviously not as board, especially with board members, making it us being 100% must also be spent on marketing. That was not something that actually came up during the review of the application. And I don't think that was the idea behind the people in that group. There definitely was a shift of like, looking at the application compared to past years. Different boards have had different, elements of interest in that they were like, okay, different focus. The idea was that we are like, these are marketing funds because we've seen in reports that they're not spending, well, there wasn't a high expectation on how much they're spending on marketing. I think it was like, are they spending 2% or 3%? And it wasn't very much, and we are here to be to market, like, as we are the tourism promotions board. So we haven't talked about, well, doing it 100%, but the idea of encouraging them to spend 25%, making a stronger initiative on marketing, because we've seen from reports that some definitely do. But
there's still 75% of that grant. That 75% of that grant is probably going to be used for operations, or it's going to be used for something else, which may be fine. But then we're not 100% of marketing grant, and you're sending a mixed signal to people. So all I'm pointing out, there's a contradiction there.
I think when we first discussed it, we did talk about it being up to 50%. That threshold being 50%. I was feeling that was too much to spring all at once. I think that the idea was that the focus of the grant should be marketing. Again, we didn't talk about necessarily 100%. I don't disagree with you.
I think you probably would get less pushback and less angry people and less emotions if you said 50% of this has to be spent on marketing and these are your new guidelines. And we're working towards a tiered evaluation system that we are going to be implementing in a few years. We want your feedback on these guidelines that we're going to be using for a base for tier. And you have a plan for rolling this out, because this is going to represent a huge shift in budget for people. Like she pointed out, some of these folks, they're going to get 50% less money than they are anticipating. And that is really going to hurt some people. Don't give them a couple years to identify different revenue streams to replace that money. Maybe I'm a little sensitive. I currently work for the Department of Emergency Management. We're getting a little slammed on the FEMA grants, getting pulled back really fast. And so I know what it's like to be sitting in an organization that is expecting grant money to be coming in, and all of a sudden it's either frozen or it's changing or it's shifting. And we're having to anticipate and shift our budget very quickly. And smaller organizations might be able to pivot a little bit. Larger organizations have more trouble pivoting their budget, but everybody is trying to plan their budgets. And if you're going to tell folks that you can anticipate 50% less on a grant that you've been historically getting, you need to give them a little bit. So I do have a suggestion. I would motion that we adopt these as guidelines and collect feedback from our community members who apply for these to make sure that this works both for them and for us. We use them as guidelines for evaluating grants and how much money we're gonna get. So when we have that conversation and Christopher pulls up his spreadsheet at the end of the year, is like, do you wanna give this person all of $8,000? We can use this as established guidelines, but that it is first launched just as guidelines, and that we've bumped the 25% of the next one.
I would just like if we make a recommendation, if we can add Amazon's box to allow them to.
Add comments on it, but also give some context.
Yeah, the guidelines could be there and be like, this is kind of future guidelines, and then new organizations can look at it and be like, oh, maybe I'll apply for this smaller one, and maybe in the future it'll get people to look at it that way.
It might give us some interesting information.
So we have an open motion. Do we have seconds for that motion?
Second.
I was just gonna ask, could you clarify what the motion is, because there's been 3 little addendums here.
Okay,
and
so
you have it all in one little.
The
bit.
clarification of my motion is that we adopt these as guidelines for the board to use to evaluate, and also make them public for applicants to use as guidelines for when they're evaluating how much money they're gonna ask for. We add a box that allows applicants to give context around why they think they should be up in a higher tier, maybe make a little argument for themselves, or even offer feedback on the tiers themselves. And I will wait for the second part, for the 50% bump, when we
So,
evaluate that argument. in the
With
next
this,
one.
that would mean that applicants will still be able to say, I would like to apply for $10,000 or 5 or 2. We technically right now have a small grant, which is 2,000 and less, and then we have the large grant, which is up to 10,000. So they would still, as they have done in the past, be able to be applying for the same, potentially the same amount. And then us as a board, as we're reviewing grants, would have this as a guideline to say, oh, this event is asking for 10,000, but historically has had 300 people. Okay, well, does it warrant that? Oh, here's their argument. This is why they say that they do. And we can decide on that.
And it's important in the orientation and the messaging that be made clear to them, that they still may not get the full amount that they're asking for, but the board is going to be using business guidelines. And that as we move forward, we are going to be using a more stringent rubric. So we need feedback from them on it, and also be looking at some other funding streams.
So I guess call the vote.
Are you putting a character limit on the box?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nothing is to be over 3,000.
Yes.
That might,
Yeah, I think we might reduce to that box.
Yeah.
But
so, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Did we get that?
Thank you, board, for listening.
Thank you.
And for taking our concerns into account.
We appreciate. I mean, I appreciate everyone being here and going through this. This is not the easiest job, especially for our recording board members for the first time. So, yes. This is the most exciting we've had this year. Yeah,
So I have one small question. Do you think, goes back to the marketing part of it, and just to considerations for later. I don't know that someone that is getting 10,000 people is doing any more marketing than someone who is marketing to 1,000 people. I think if you're putting ads in something, or, buying radio time or whatever, you're not considering how many people that's reaching. Like, you're gonna do it no matter how big your organization is if it's within your budget. So I don't know that the numbers of attendees is directly a ratio to marketing. Marketing is certainly going to encourage your numbers, but I think that what you're doing is probably the same if you're a medium-sized organization, or if you're a slightly bigger one, or, I just think the ratio is off. And Carly, being in marketing, might think about that for next. I agree that the 25 is a great idea, but I don't think that it can equate to, it's not a direct ratio.
So did it include like signage and like like flyers and things and events, like if you had an event where you needed 300 of these versus you needed 1,000 of these, it's gonna cost
There's a
more.
lot that falls under marketing. But I also say that since we, you know, well, in the packet, you'll see there's like the reports. Actually, the only thing that's not in here is how much people have spent on marketing. And of course, not everyone sees all the applications, but historically, they're not all events are marketing as much as they could. When they're receiving so much money. So this is a start for us to make some change and so that we're not penalizing, like we definitely want, of course, well, we want all the events to happen. We want to be able to support them all, but financially, we can't.
Yeah.
So we have to have some way to start separating it out and work on that. And I think this is a great conversation where like we want to work with our culturals and with the events and with the organizations, and we have to start somewhere. So definitely, you know, we appreciate the input and yeah, it will be taken into account as we go through, and next year we get to revise again. We got through here.
I'll save it for when we get to recommendation 6, but I do think we need to have clear definition of what constitutes a marketing expense.
Yeah.
So that's presented to them at the very beginning so that they understand, but these are the things that.
We need to
Consider
define what we consider marketing.
Yeah.
I think it defines what we consider.
I think Aaron's amended motion to present this scale that gives recommendations based on your attendance, this would be an appropriate amount to apply for. Also giving them an opportunity to ask for more based on, you know, the things we talked about, is a great way to help them know what is an appropriate amount to apply for based on their expected numbers. And it also empowers you a little more than just purely kind of knowing that, gosh, we're only 300 people, 10,000 sure is a lot. It gives you the guidelines to have that conversation when the numbers aren't, you know, in alignment with the amount being asked for. And it gives them the number to know what to ask for. So it's
Starting to set some expectations and boundaries around things. So we do want to fund everybody, but we have a pool of money and more applicants coming in. So we got to figure out how we can evaluate those applicants in a fair way. That will benefit them, but also benefit the community. But also when you're rolling out big changes, you gotta.
Sure. Well, let's move to our next one. So we're good with number 5. On number 4.
We are on number 5.
Yes.
Rolling along at a furious pace.
Add a box to capture past attendance for prior year's events to applicant or applications. Need to keep the answers the same across the application.
I moved that, I moved that, yes, we don't this. I'll second.
All in favor?
Can I add a friendly, amendment to that to maybe do past CT funding for the last 2 years, so that's the same box to go with that.
Okay.
So you had attendance of X and you were funded at X amount for TOT for the last 2 years.
Yes.
Just so that way you guys have the visual, what's on the application.
I amend my motion. That's the word. Thanks for keeping me on track, Chris, to what Chris said. And please don't make me repeat it, because it made sense, but I'm not gonna be able to repeat it all.
I'll second
Maybe
the
say that
amended.
sentence for me one more time and for everyone.
It needs to be said.
Okay,
Does Chris say that?
So I'll go ahead. So the friendly amendment would be to, in addition to adding a box that captures past attendance for this event or for these event applications, is to include a box for the TOT funding received for those events.
yes.
Yes.
For first-time applicants, is there gonna be a little thing
Where
Never
they
received
if they're
First time applicant.
First time or maybe
Yeah.
unknown if,
Okay, so Aaron made the motion. It's been amended. Who seconded
I
it?
did.
Tony.
20
Okay,
seconds. We've had discussion.
We've had
All
discussion.
in favor?
Aye.
Okay. On to 6. We have recommend that 25% TOT grant funding be spent on marketing and promotion material verified by submitted receipts and then close out reports. And then put together a little chart that would show like if someone received 3,000, the expectation is they spend 750 minimum on marketing.
And during our subcommittee, we
can discuss, we need a motion.
Need a motion on the table to discuss after.
I'd like to motion that we discuss this. How does that?
I have a second. Right there. You do that.
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No formality.
Thank you. So in our subcommittee, we did discuss this many times about the percentages and it was definitely that 50%. It was like, oh my God, we're gonna scare people. I remember we were talking about that. So that's why we're like, we're gonna go soft and we're gonna start at 5. But now that we're here, it's just like, oh my goodness, it's like, it's not soft. It's like they want, to the 50%. So my recommendation is that we change the 25 to 50. So that way we can all be in favor with that. Now that we
So, for instance, if someone was requesting $1,000, the expectation is that they'd spend $5,000 on.
that's what I'm hearing, yeah.
Okay.
Boy, I think that's gonna scare me. I think that's gonna be hard.
I'm done. I won't apply if that's the.
That's gonna push a lot of people away.
Maybe we could do like a range, like at least 25 to 50% to give like a bracket.
I think we need a number.
One of the other things that we spoke about is starting with 25%, but then giving deference to an application that spent more on marketing, who proposed to spend more on marketing. So we would look at a grant more positively if they proposed to spend 50% than we would a grant that was only going to spend the bare minimum.
Just check that out.
I mean, they have to present receipts, so.
But what's the consequence if they don't? I guess. I mean, not that I want, again, I don't want to penalize people, but what's the point? If we're not checking it and we're not, and they've already gotten the money and we're not gonna claw back the money and we're not gonna penalize them the next year.
They're not getting money until we see those, so if they've made the.
You're saying our receipts would have to show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if their receipts don't show that they've used 50% of the money, they don't get those other.
But if we're giving them some sort of cookie for saying they're gonna spend 50%, and then the next year they come in again and say, I'm gonna spend 50%, and again,
No, I think
the receipts still line up.
I think we notate them when they don't get.
If we do that, though, it needs to be in writing in the guidelines, or there needs to be some sort of like aspect to it, like it has to be written down somewhere in the contract.
Or you have to explain the criteria.
Is there a reason why we have to keep this in quarters? Is it just for the math? Like, can't we do 35%? I mean, I agree 50% is extreme, but 25% is kind of white milk toast, so.
Well, I think it depends on how much they're applying for. And I mean, of course, when this was put together, it was based on, an event that has 300 people is applying for $3,000 and $750 minimum. Again, with the idea of in the future, like we're easing them into a thing, is a good starting place. Which is a big difference than $10,000, like a 300 person event that's applying for $10,000, and we're saying spend 5,000. That's a lot for 300 people, but then they also should not technically be applying for 10,000 if it's focused marketing.
And then again, like it was discussed that we did put the 25%, then, there's that confusion. So how do we even ease out? I mean, I understand that changes in any change of anywhere, of any that aspect of life, does bring that anxiety, that uncertainty, it's like what we're expecting and everything else. So we're definitely well aware of the emotions that are gonna be put out. But then again, it's just That's why we came with such a low number. You know, not to confuse, but to be soft on it, but now that we're hearing that, no, we, you know.
I'm not saying it necessarily has to be 50%,
Yeah,
we keep talking in terms of 25, 50%, 75, 100, like there are other percentages in the world that we can't use that are maybe not 25, 50%.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure who said they would be out if it was 50%, but can I just ask, if in your overall budget, you had allotted $4,000 to marketing, and you could apply for this grant, and even if it was at 100% and you got $4,000 to use toward your marketing, why would that not be worthwhile for you to apply for?
Because it would be a total wash. So the money that I'm spending on marketing, if it's coming, the bulk of it, it goes back to the whole ratio thing. We're a small enough organization that I have no way of increasing my capacity. I'm with the Willamette Master Course.
Right.
Hudson Hall holds 420 people. We have 2 concerts. For one, like the Veterans Concert, we hold twice on a Saturday and a Sunday. So there's no way for me to increase my numbers to get more grant money, but my marketing is the same. I have ads in the travel sailing book. I put things in radios. And so the money that I'm spending is the same. I'm sorry, I'm emotional about this.
Yeah.
The money that I'm spending is the same as someone that has the ability to have more space. And we want our name out there. And part of that is promoting the culture and the availability of Salem itself. It's not even just us. So there's a bigger picture involved that I think you guys are missing. That it doesn't just go back to the event specifically. If we market ourselves and people will go, hey, there's like 10 really cool cultural things happening in Salem in the next 6 months. That puts Salem on the map, regardless of whether they come specifically for my event. And the marketing is the same no matter who we are, except for I understand that there are people that are doing less than their share to get the monies. So that's why I'm emotional about it. I think the ratio is completely off. So it's not, I write the grants. I don't have a grant writer. I have a part-time employee. I don't have time to waste it on $4,000. I'm sorry, I can find someone else that would give me that money as far as a sponsor goes or somebody, you know, without jumping through the hoops. I think.
Can I ask a question too, Chris? When it goes to when you look at the goals of the CTPAB grants, I keep hearing people say it's a marketing grant, it's a marketing grant, it's a marketing grant. It's a grant to offer events in Salem to bring people in. So, yes, a huge part of that is marketing to get the word out, but the event itself is also bringing people in. I mean, so I'm curious, is there somewhere in the bylaws of the CTPAB that says this is a marketing grant? The words exactly, I mean, I'm curious.
I don't know for sure if it's in the actual application itself, but there is language to we want people to be able to spend this money mostly on marketing and promotion. It's always been the historical desire for that. Now we know for over the years that, you know, marketing and promotion is one cost to putting on events.
Right.
And there are many other costs. And it really depends from organization to organization as to what they're putting on. You know, maybe they're putting on something that they need to bring in top of the act or whatever, or they need to rent a facility that will accommodate their specific type of event. So there's all kinds of different dynamic pieces that go into the cost of putting on the event.
Sure.
So the money, you know, the TOT is for tourism generally in general. But the board has always had the back idea that it's promotions and marketing should be the forefront, but we're not going to limit that and say you can only spend it on that. Now the dynamic's changing a little bit. They want to have more focus on that. But we've always allowed it to be used for you know, big name vendors or whatever, concert names, you know, artists, that kind of stuff, venue rentals,
Staff time.
well, yeah, not so much staff time. We really want it to be more of the promotional operational side of things, what it takes to put on the event. So a lot of the marketing, a lot of, I'm just drawing a blank on it.
Programs.
If you have to shut down streets and stuff like
Right,
that,
right.
parks,
Permits.
permitting, that kind of stuff, things that would actually go into the cost of putting on the event. So that's been kind of, there hasn't been a real focus.
Because I wonder if in your application, if you pick a percentage of marketing, explain to people, and I don't know if it's already in there, what are examples of marketing? Permits.
I think it's asked, you know, what are you gonna spend the money on? So what are you gonna use the TOT money for? That's one of the questions.
Right,
And so then they'll provide what.
but giving examples, like you just said, permits.
And
or things that-
sorry,
things that people may not have thought of as falling under marketing. Oh, yeah, gosh, I didn't think of that as being marketing, right? I don't know.
I think you can certainly make the grant, it's been mentioned before about the price of an act or
Mhm.
is that bringing artists in or bringing that isn't a form of marketing.
Right.
That draws people
Sure,
in.
yeah,
And I think if we can clearly define what constitutes marketing, I think we can, it will help everybody make a better determination on how things should be used.
And help them to think beyond, you know, posters and ads and, you know,
Yeah.
to things like a big name, you know,
Mhm.
that's gonna draw people,
And I
because
think,
that's easy to spend it all on.
I think it's worthwhile to encourage more effective marketing. It doesn't always, the highest price marketing isn't always the most effective marketing.
You know, the subcommittee saw really low numbers of marketing and wants to promote marketing. It's not, it doesn't need to be 100%, but it needs to be promoted over, you know, 2 or 3%.
but I'd be curious
They
too
were talking
about
about-
those really low numbers. I wonder if they actually have more marketing expenses than they realize.
And they just didn't submit them.
They probably
Sometimes they're looking for, you know, it's an $8,000 award. They're looking for, how do I get to that 8,000 as fast as possible? And sometimes that's the venue, sometimes that's the musicians, sometimes that's the permitting costs for shutting, you know, for renting the parks, or police, safety, et cetera. So when it comes to that, they may have spent more money on marketing, but we're not getting the receipts on.
Because they don't realize that it's actually part of.
But, yeah,
So,
Unfortunately, it's just a service then, like the idea of taking an event. And little marketing, then maybe that's something we just haven't seen.
Right, in fact,
But
they're
that's
actually doing
also-
a lot more than they realize.
Yeah.
But it's also because we have and you've seen the budget sheet for these events, you know, and there is a line item for marketing. So that's where, at the time when you're applying for these applications for these events, you put that in your budget, how much are you actually spending? The board gets to see that and review it, how much of that $8,000 that they're asking for is spent on marketing, how much the event is actually spending on marketing. And so they have that availability, and that's in the questions right now. It's just at what level does the board focus on that now?
And doesn't the budget, the way it is now, automatically calculate a certain percentage? It says,
yeah.
what is the percentage? 25 or something?
Well,
No,
no,
it's
it's a
a
year.
No, it just provides whatever whatever
Oh.
in the marketing line,
So it doesn't tell you it has to be a certain.
it doesn't tell you it has to be a certain level. No.
Okay. And then the question is, if a person fills that out and the percentage happens to be 30%, the question is, when they do the report, is it still 30%? Did they actually?
This is also based on their budget, not on how much TOT they're receiving. So like, if your budget
Oh, I
is
see what you're saying.
$50,000
Gotcha.
and you're spending, and you put $5,000 in the marketing line, then it would say, oh, you spent 10%. As opposed to, and
Yeah.
like, say they.
It's
applied
just
for 10.
calculating how much of your budget,
Yeah.
how
Of
much
the
of the
overall budget.
overall budget is being
That's
spent on
how it
marketing.
currently, but we do
The
currently,
top fund side here, right here, will take a look at how much TOT money are you asking for? And at what percentage of the TOT is of the total athletic event. So it does capture both percentages. You know, how much of your event is being funded by TOT, and then how much of your event is spending on marketing. So that's captured on that budget sheet.
I have no say in the committee's workings. I just want to say what you did took a lot of thought, a lot of energy. And I appreciate the focus that was done with that, because I know it's not easy. On the other side of the coin, the groups that are the cultural groups that are not represented here, and there are many, have no clue what you're doing. And I think it would be shocking to suddenly receive something without more advance notice than October when they're applying for things right away. So if you're going to be, say, making a percentage of the proposed grant, a percentage that might seem heinous to certain groups, I think that information should be going out immediately rather than waiting until October, so that you can get more feedback, because it will be hard and fast in October. Even if you're going to implement it, because you may be hearing, we're not doing anything then, and then what has Salem gained by it? I think it's intense work, and I think that the focus of the grants have been potentially used by a lot of organizations outside of the realm of what the intent originally was, marketing and tourism. But a big shift, I think, is going to be receiving a lot of feedback, and unfortunately, we're going to take some of that.
Thank you.
My one question would be, is there a communications plan for rolling these changes out? Is there a communications plan for rolling these changes out?
We tell Chris what to do at the end of it.
So the answer is
Email people lists.
we don't have any kind of communications plan to
So
engage.
this is the public meetings being discussed, so that's one of the media channels. So that the other one is the orientation that I go over and say, this is the change that have been made or have been made to that. So until it's finalized by the board, those are the opportunities,
Do we have a mailing list of past applicants?
What's that?
Do we have an email list of past applicants?
Yep, we do have an email list of past applicants. And that's actually what we send out
Yeah.
to, for all these public meetings. I send that out to all the past applicants. So everybody received an email.
And that's
with
exactly
the
why I'm
packet.
here tonight. Exactly.
I get
Right. You're right. I mean, you do everything you can.
So I would recommend that maybe in the beginning, when you send out that this board packet or this report for the next, with the agenda and everything, make special note that people read it. A lot happened at the last meeting. Read this, make it bright, bright red letters or something. I don't know.
I think you
The,
have
the subject line needs to be emphatic that there are changes coming.
Well, you can only do so much to make that.
Allude to it.
Can I ask a question?
Anyway,
As far as like an answer to this, is there a difference between board requires and board expects? And if there is there an opportunity to give a board requirement and a board expectation within the percentages? Board requires this, board expects this, and then this is the definition of what would fill that threshold.
Requirement would be, well, currently there is a requirement for, on the grading scale, it's like, if the applicant spent, or it shows like less than 20% spent on marketing, they get a 0 point. If it's 2%, there's a 1, and if it's over 3%, they get 2. 3% spent on marketing is not very much.
Oh, that's all it
necessarily.
is right now.
And then when you also look at, it depending on how much they're getting also with TOT, but that 3% is based on their budget. So like if they have $100,000 budget, they're spending 3%, like, well, the minimum says, as long as they're spending 3%, they get 2 points. So that is like the requirement in the current situation. We can definitely discuss changing it so that it's like, here's the requirement, And kind of, well, that's what this was put forward as 25% of what they receive for TOT, be required on marketing. And it could be then, but you know, expectation is you will spend 50% or
25% comes to 3% as far as
Yeah.
the goes, and then 30%.
yeah, something like that.
So in answer to your question, yes, the board has the ability to change the criteria for the application, the questions, scoring criteria, et cetera. That's what this process is kind of going through right now. And so if that's, so as a board member, you can make motions to adopt certain changes. If that's, you want to make a distinction between that aspect of it, that's perfectly within your purview as a board.
So right now, we do have a motion on for it be 50% of what they receive TOT.
25.
The original
motion.
Betsy
Betsy
changed
changed
it.
that.
Oh, okay.
She
Put
said
her in
50%.
her motion.
Well, it was based on what was being discussed.
Yeah.
I wanted to also mention, just a friendly reminder that this money comes from overnight stays. And so there are events that are may not generate those overnight stays. I just attended one of our events last week, and it was all people funded. There were people coming from all over the Pacific Northwest, from California to Washington and Canada, even coming into this event. And of course, you know, we're spending the night, and those monies are for these other events that they had nothing to do with grants or anything like that, but yet, you know, we're all benefiting from that. And so again, you know, there's some events that may not generate those overnight stays, but yet they have the ability to what's the word, be a recipient of those monies for their events. And so I just wanted to put that out there, and it's not just like, okay, look, we're just funding this money, it just comes from anywhere, because it doesn't, it's from overnight stays. Is that right? Is that my understanding?
Sure.
And so there are events that not generate that, but yet they are benefiting. So.
I just wanted to clarify that Aaron made the original motion at 25%, which got a second, and we're in discussion, or Betsy made a recommendation.
Yeah, exactly. So
But it
the
wasn't
motion on the
seconded.
table is.
That's what I have,
25%.
is that
Yeah.
there's a motion for 25%.
And that was because of the discussion that it was
Yeah.
gonna be confusing and it's double, you know, it was, and so that's why I just brought that up, but.
Yeah, the 50% came up during the discussion.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. I sit corrected.
It's fine. There were a lot of numbers being thrown.
There's also discussion that 50% would be an absolute no-go for some organizations. That's discussion also.
Do we want to vote on 25%? Okay, too.
So we're recommending the 25%. Is that 25% going to be our new rubric, the new 3%, or are we just keep recommending it and tracking it?
Kind of like what Jen talked about.
Specifics of the event grants.
It would, currently, it's 0, 1, no, 0, 2, and 3, 0, 1, and I can't remember. They get 0 points, 1 point, 2 points, so 2 points they get up to 3. More than 3 would turn to more than 25.
That's what I'm
They
asking.
would get 2 points for more than 25.
I think the 1-3% is on the facility operating grants, because that's part of their overall budget.
What's on,
Is that on the grant application, I believe it's that
Would it not make sense for it to be, if we're using a 0, 1, 2, 3 scale, like, did we get 0 for under 25%? Did we get 2 for 25%? And then over 25%,
We do 3.
then we get 3.
If
Yeah.
that is what.
Or you do 25
Whatever
to
we-
40% is 2, and 40% of is 3. Or some scenario.
potentially, yes?
Chris is looking at the actual current rubric or score.
You are correct. It is 3% marketing expense. Greater than 3% is 3 points, greater than 2% is 2 points, and greater than 1%.
So that would basically change to
That would change.
greater than 25 is 3 points. 25 is 2 points and less than 25 is 0, something like of that nature.
Is this motion, also the definition of marketing in it, or is that something?
That definitely needs to be clarified more in orientation.
I mean, but we have to, as a board,
The board has to make.
create that definition. I don't know if that needs to be in this particular recommendation, but I think we need to do that.
I'd also like to note that we are at 7:30. This meeting is supposed to adjourn at 8.
But yes,
So,
but I'm trying to get clarity. So is this recommendation, we're saying recommended 25%, are we replacing that 3% with 25% in the rubric? Is that what this
Yes.
suggestion?
So then what are the other two?
Yeah, what's the breakdown in other words?
I think what I said, now I'm confused at where we went from there, is that if it was under 25%, it would be 1 or 0, whatever scale we're using. 25% would be 2, and then over, or either give a span of 25% to 40% or 50% be 2, and then above that be 3. So you're getting the most points for spending.
Logistics question here, keep us in compliance with public laws. Do we have to hash that out right now, or can we just say that percentage that we're using is the 25% instead of the 3%, and we're gonna figure out what the actual range is on the rubric later?
Number 9 is on the scoring rubric redoing. So I'll try and get that as part of that.
Okay,
so we can adopt this potentially. We can vote.
we can adopt this one at 25% or replace that 3% with 25%, and then we're gonna figure out what the scoring rubric is down the line. That is my motion, amended or otherwise. And I got a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Good lord, we have to do this 3 more times.
Well, I'll make a motion for number 7.
Well, I'll just say it out loud so it's on the record. Request to change the CIP vendor quotes from 3 to 2 quotes. That's capital improvement grants, so
Yeah, I second.
all in favor?
Motion was Tony.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have any opposed? I guess I can also be asking that, or any.
Are any of you opposed? Is there any discussion?
Okay, 8, add language to event grant report form instructing to upload copies of receipts and invoices costs with summary list when submitting the closeout report.
So
Any second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So I'm sorry, who made the motion?
He made the motion, I'm seconded. We're the dream team, man.
And number 9, grant manual scoring objectives for event grant reline match, event grant application questions to scoring criteria questions. Chris to provide draft example at September meeting.
And that's where that little.
Yeah.
Yes.
Motion,
I motion.
okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Good, we got through the summary of recommendations.
And I don't think we're gonna be mad at
Somebody
orientation.
wait a second.
It's shorts, so that's a good thing.
Now we have what's that? The Cultural Tourism Fund report. Okay. It's in your packet.
So through May, TSC collections have come in at almost 4.2 million. Our budget was anticipating 5.2. June activities, is our highest month. So anticipate probably at 500,000-600,000. So it'll be interesting to see how we end up the year. Expenditures are on target for what we've had for a budget. Not a whole lot to go over there. But TOT collection growth is at 9%, so if that holds true, then we should be fairly close to that 5.1, 5.2, which is where this table comes in, tracking it on a monthly basis. So right now I've got it projected right around 5.1, 5.2 revenue is anticipated. So no questions on any of the expenditures, anything like that? The rest of your the rest of the agenda packet is all the reports that we received since the last board meeting.
Quite a lot, because, you know, end of year, for people to get the reports and to receive the reimbursement.
And for those that are new, this is what the reports look like for our facility operators. It's single page, provides the number of attendants. This one is actually for a fourth quarterly report. There's also an annual report from Willamette Creative Center.
Do you need a motion to receive the report?
No,
Now we're gonna.
this is information.
We have roundtable discussion or and appearance of interested citizens. Do any of our interested citizens have anything to share? Would you like to share with us?
I never want to hear from us again.
Any?
It's an important conversation.
We appreciate hearing from you. Criticism, love, whatever. It all helps.
There is
make us
love and
better.
the criticism is just directed at making you think from a different perspective,
We don't know what we don't know.
right?
It would be better for the board if all of our applicants were here.
I agree.
It would,
Sure.
and I think main conversation is what's gonna get this application refined so that it's easy, maybe enjoyable, and
That's a big
functions
ask.
really well. Hey,
Functional,
hey,
easy and functional, enjoyable.
I don't know. Some people like filling out forms,
I've seen,
You like filling out forms.
that's not true.
as a new member of the board, it's really valuable to listen. to
Yes, it
insights and have-
Good information.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll put on the second half for a moment, is that I am working on the fall edition of Press Play. So if anyone's got an event happening in September, October, November, or really to the end of the year, so I can be aware of them, let me know. Parking lots items, I don't think, do we still have things.
Do you
for parking
wanna-
lot?
Our guests want to say anything?
I'm not gonna say something. This has nothing to do with TOT potentially. But I put up Kaylee of the Valley signs at various businesses in town. And with the new parking, fees that are being enacted, I have heard from some of the businesses that their business has fallen even in a short period of time. Mhm. So I think there's gonna be a period of adjustment with that, and I don't know how that might impact other things like, future TOT monies coming in, for example.
Now when events have free parking, that will be a selling feature. Potentially, people to market with.
Shall see.
I won't.
Customers have always been able to park in the parkades for free. It's the employees that in theory, are gonna be more affected, not the shoppers, not the customers, not the event goers. And employees can get a note from their employer, and if they make less than $25 an hour, they can get a much greater permit, a much reduced permit for the whole year, however they wanna do their parking. And that's gonna happen for at least a year while they evaluate, the effect on the harm or the effect, or however you want to say it, so.
It will be interesting to see how it plays out. I just wanted to let you know what some businesses
Yeah.
are telling me, as I walk around.
Yes,
Anything else?
Lisa, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you. So we moved.
Yay, congratulations.
This is the Willamette Arts Center that moved, by the way.
Yeah, Willamette Arts Center has moved from the fairgrounds to a place out on Fairview Industrial Drive Southeast. We have a lot of work to do in there. But it's very exciting. It's adding approximately 1,500 more square feet to our operation. It has classrooms that are separate from the main floor and free parking and and no interruptions from our landlord, shutting us down for periods of time. I don't know, exactly how it's going to go in terms of getting all the contractors in and out of there that will allow us to open. But I'm hopeful we can do things in the fall. I'll keep you posted, Carly, because
Thank
we
you.
will have a grand opening. It's a very exciting and monumental change for us. We are, having to look at, we were deeply, deeply subsidized by the fairgrounds. And there's no other place in town that would do that for us. So in addition to just having to pay a lease that's at market value, we have to pay our utilities. So at the fairgrounds, we didn't pay for electric, we didn't pay for gas. We were very, very spoiled. And unfortunately, we didn't put a lot away for a rainy day. But in any case, I am really excited about expanding the programs that we offer, expanding the types of art from ceramics to drawing to any number of media. And I can't wait for you to come see it. I'll have the board come have a visit too.
Thank you, Lisa.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Is that,
everybody online?
Yep, that's everybody online.
with that, if no one has anything else to say,
Did we not have anything to
Thank the board for their hard work.
I agree.
This has been a really
A marathon. It was a
Yes.
marathon one.
yes.
we don't
We're
have
not usually
anything,
this rough.
we have
I promise. Come back.
anything in our parking lot that we have to address?
No,
Our parking lot.
We have to do it.
Then I would move to adjourn.
I second.
Look at that.
Oh, there.
We're early. We're done. Thank you so much for being here and for being part of the board. I promise, well, I can't promise that any other meeting will be painless, but this is, if you survive this, I, then we're good. I guess really got thrown into it.
Thank you all. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you.